So thanks for all the comments and the feedback. And a question that I got, and it's a very good question, and I'm going to get into it tonight, is about fighting in prison. What happens during a fight? And the most interesting thing is, the philosophy is people say is go to jail, you find the biggest guy and punch him in the face. I've never ever seen that happen. I don't know everything, right? I just know what I know and what I've experienced. But I've never seen nobody walk into a jail and punch the biggest guy in the face to establish themselves. Because there's a lot of things that happen when violence breaks out in prison. The first thing I can say is that people do make moves like that, like walk up to somebody and just sucker punch them. But usually it's called a check-in move, and people do that so they can get locked up and not have to be on the compound. Maybe if they owe somebody money and they don't want to, anybody to know the real reason of what's going on. And that's called a check-in move. Like somebody owed somebody money and, they didn't want to pay them. So they punched some guy in the face and, they ended up right in front of the cop, and they ended up, going to the shoe or going to the box and getting a disciplinary transfer. But so what happens when there's a fight in prison? There's many things, many scenarios you can go through about what happens when there's a fight. Do people get away with fights? Yeah, sometimes people do get away. Nobody ever finds out about anything. The authorities, I'm saying, people know about it. What happens though is, like, you can have a problem with somebody and the cop not be around, and you can get into a fight with somebody and, people see it and just keep going about their business, and whatever happens, happens. Yeah, that definitely does happen, of course, But for 80% of the time, the staff gets involved. It's bigger than, you can't keep a skirt on it. In other words, you can't hide it, So say, for instance, there's a unit with 120 people on it, say, for instance, and the cops inside the block, and a problem breaks out. Somebody starts arguing, then there's a fight. The first thing the officer does is he'll call for assistance. Okay? The second thing that happens is when all the cops run, it's called hitting the deuces, because what the deuces means is there's a red button on the radio that they hit. It's an emergency button. People come from, everywhere. All staff comes from every direction. The deuces, they call it the deuces. We always called it, they hit the deuces, because before, when you hit 222 on the phone, that made an emergency signal as well. Now everybody had it on the radios, but it's still called the deuces, just for another way of calling an emergency signal. They come from all parts. Administrators everywhere. They all run to where the alarm goes off. Wherever the alarm goes off, that's where everybody runs to. The lieutenant is usually calling, when an alarm goes off, the lieutenant has the location, and he'll say, 82, 83, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So he'll call everybody. That's one scenario. Then whatever they do to diffuse the situation, they do, of course. Sometimes they can't diffuse it, and then they'll call the next team in with the beanbag guns and try to, riot gear and all that, you know what I'm saying? Those are extreme. You hardly ever see that. I think I've seen them suited up in the 27 years I was in prison, handful of times, maybe 4 or 5 times, suited up like that. So say, for instance, something happens in the block. 2 guys get into a little bit of a fight, or you don't even know about it, You're outside in the yard, you start hearing rumblings of it. That's kind of the worst thing, because it kind of takes on a life of its own, and everybody loves gossip in jail. Everybody loves to talk about the next guy, as long as the focus is off you. Oh, you heard them 2 guys got into it. Oh, this guy did this guy did that. But what that does is it kind of draws a bead to the situation. So it kind of takes on a life of its own. Then people start talking, other people in other blocks. And what ends up happening is the cops end up hearing about it, So say, for instance, that happens and the cops don't know right away. But now, they'll hear inklings of it, or they'll feel something wrong in the unit. what they usually do is if they know that there's been a fight or they feel that there's been a fight, they'll lock the whole jail down. Or, at least the one block, depending on the severity. They'll lock the whole block down. And what they'll do is they'll go cell to cell. 3 or 4 cops will come in and they'll do something called a hand check. They'll check your hands. They'll check your face. They make you take your shirt off, turn around to see if you have any bruises. And that's usually an indicator. If somebody has a fresh cut on them, that's a telltale sign, right? Somebody's knuckles are bleeding. Telltale sign. So that's kind of the first measure they do. Now, if they do that and they don't find anything, then maybe they go to the next layer of security, which is call everybody back. Because maybe somebody was in the unit, it was during a move, and people got out. Now they start going around to every unit, and they start doing them same hand checks. So a lot kind of goes into that. It's not just you get into a fight and that's it. Now, there's ramifications. If you get into a fight, I remember the one time that I got into a fight in the law library, I was for sure there was cameras everywhere, but there wasn't, But what had happened to me is some kid sucker punched me and I ended up hitting him back, but I seen blood. So I ran, I ran into the bathroom that was down the hall and I checked to see if it was me bleeding. Like, oh, did this kid catch me with a shot? But it wasn't. It was him bleeding. But by the time I come out of the bathroom, there was cops all around. Somebody had called them. They heard the disturbance. Staff called them. And when I looked down, I had blood all over my shorts and I had blood on my hands. I just checked my face because I went, oh shit, did this kid catch me? I was vain, what I'm saying? Oh my God. But I ended up having it on my hands. So the cops locked me up. For that guy with blood on him is an easy call, right? But what ended up happening with that is a short story is that the kid he ended up going to the hospital for his eye socket, but he never said nothing about me. And, we had talked outside at rec from different cages. And I was like, hey, and he was like, I didn't say nothing. I'm like, well, obviously I'm not saying nothing, And it kind of, the conclusion of that was we kind of made amends. I was like, hey, listen, it's, stupid, this and that, whatever. It was about something very insignificant. It's just an exchange of words. And so we ended up walking out of the hole together. And that very seldom happens. Because what happens usually in a fight is the aggressor, if you tell on the person and tell them, yeah, well, that guy was an aggressor, he hit me first, then he usually gets transferred and you stay, But the way that worked out is we both walked out together. We had made amends, and I was like, hey, listen, no problem, whatever. I mean, the kid was ended up being like a decent kid, and we ended up, coexisting on the line together because we made amends. But, it was one time, because a lot of people had said to me, yo, that never happens. One guy gets transferred, so that was a good conclusion because he didn't say nothing and I didn't say nothing. And, my story was the fight, like, I don't know anything, you know what I'm saying? Because if I had said something, oh, I had this, if I made an excuse, I would have never got out of it. Because what the kid said, when they asked him, hey, listen, you know what? You say nothing happened, but, it doesn't seem right. How did Bartolomeo have blood on him? And he came up with a great answer. He said, oh, maybe that's the guy to help me up. So, and that's how we both got out. So now if I had said, oh, he swung on me first, I just said, I don't know what happened. I don't know. I have nothing to say. I don't have a statement to make. And they were like, you got a statement. I'm saying, I don't have no statement to make. So that really saved my life, because if I had said anything or made an excuse, I'd be like, oh, somebody pushed me into him, or like that wouldn't have made sense. So it ended up working out good. But, a lot of scenarios for fights. Sometimes there's gang fights. There's stabbings, and then, that brings out the riot gear. That brings out the SWAT team. The SWAT team is the last layer of security that, keeps the order in the prison. They come in the gear, they have the gas, so that is the extreme. I've seen that happen like a few times when there was, there was a gang disturbance in Leavenworth Penitentiary that I remember vividly that, was multiple people got stabbed, multiple people went to the hospital, and it was right in my unit. And, staff came deep, deep, deep. Then they came with the gear. There's like layers of it. You know what I'm saying? So if it's a false alarm, you'll see 10 people run and you'll be like, oh yeah, I just hit the button by accident. All right, false alarm. But now if something really happens, there's the 10 people come and they try to, diffuse the disturbance. Then if that don't work, then there's another layer. Then there's like 20 more people come. Now there's 30. Then more people come with, disposable cuffs with like the twist ties to, to try to get order back into the situation. And then like the last layer is, the people suited up with the guns, but it very seldom gets to that. And, so those are like possible scenarios of what happens with fights. Sometimes, you hear the sneakers. Once you hear the sneakers screeching, geek, 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 then you kind of know something's up, And then sometimes for the serious disturbance, I remember I heard that one time, and I was on my top bunk reading a book, and then nothing. You could hear crickets. I knew that was bad. I knew something was going on, because when you hear, after you hear the sneakers, then you hear nothing, you know something bad happened. Like everybody's dummied up, But I remember I heard that, and I looked out, and there was a dude in a huge puddle of blood in Leavenworth. And, he got booked up pretty good. But I knew when I heard the silence after the sneakers. I heard a boop, 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 boop. And then it was silence. And, he got stabbed up pretty good. So now that's different scenarios, what happens, right? So everybody says, oh, you get into a fight. There's a lot of consequences that come with that. So if you did get into a fight, let's say you got into a fight, the cops saw it, they locked you up. Now, what happens? Now, think about it. You're going to the hole, right? So now, and it wasn't like you packed up your own property you were transferring, right? Now you're at the cop's mercy. Now, like, you made his job hard. You got into a wreck on his watch. Now he throws all your property into a bag. Who knows? Half of it. Maybe he don't let your bunkie come in there, and your bunkie's like, that's his. No, that's his. That's his. Usually your bunkie, the person that you live with, or the person next to you that lives near you, they will try to guide the cop. Like, hey, that's his stuff over there. He has stuff behind the locker. He's got, those are his sneakers. Yeah, no, on that side is his. So they try to guide you. But sometimes if you get a guy pissed off because you did some greasy shit on his shift, and now he's got to work hard. Now he's like, fuck all this shit. I'm just throwing that stuff in there. Whatever's yours. Take care of it later. You know what I mean? And there's no talking to him at that point. So now you get your property fucked off, right? Everything that you have, like contraband, like even if you had like 100 books of stamps, you had gone, right? Because they're getting confiscated. They're going through all your shit and taking everything. So that's just the stuff on the ephemeral part of it, like, the stuff on the outskirts, not even talking about now you're going to lose your good time. You go to the DHO. Now you're losing, say, for instance, you had like a cut shirt that you like, altered stuff. You might get another shot for that. You got a tattoo needle. Now the cop might have a hair across his ass. I'm writing you up for the tattoo needle. I'm writing you up for extra stamps. God forbid you have alcohol or booze or, homemade stuff or drugs on you. Now you might get a court case. You know what I'm saying? So all this stuff comes into play. This is why you try to stay out of trouble every day, because, even you got fruit, you got vegetables, you got a contract with the guy in the kitchen. You're going to lose that. You're running a gambling ticket. Now you're not going to be there. Like where's all your money going? So there's so many variables that happen even before you get the sanctions from the jail. Now, let's say all that happens, the worst case scenario, you got all these things going on. Like, oh, this guy owes me money. I'm supposed to go for a team review. I'm supposed to go to a lower security. That ain't going to happen now. Then you go down into the shoe. And it happened that time. I had just got out of the shoe in a camp. And then I was, right back in the shoe. And then they came to me like, hey, that guy got taken to the hospital. Now it's like you can get indicted for assaulting somebody. That's a street charge. They said you broke the guy's eye socket. Imagine I'm sick. I'm disgusted. I'm like, oh my God. Like, now, like, was it worth it? Now I'm sitting in the box and I'm like, oh man, what the hell? I'm going to get indicted. I just got out of the hole. I'm in the hole again. Now, your whole bid gets disrupted. Now you're in solitary confinement. Now you're not running around doing this, doing that. Your day is kind of consumed. You're not going to work out in the morning, coming back, taking a shower. You might not take a shower for 3 days when you're in the shoe if they got no showers in the shoe. But in my case, he ended up coming back from the hospital. They whatever, give him like a couple of stitches, and nothing was really wrong with the interior of his eye socket. He ended up being okay. He didn't make a stink about it. Even like I said, he was a pretty good dude. He didn't tell. He didn't. We kind of had stuck to that code that we were supposed to in jail. And but I was nervous as shit. I was like, I'm gonna get fucking indicted. I'm gonna get more. Now you go get indicted for assault. You got to go to court, get the indictment, get a complaint written against you, go plead out to 2 years or something. Yeah, it's nuts. So I'm saying these are all the things when people say, oh, I'm going to go find the biggest guy in jail, punch him in the face. I'm saying it's just, it's not, it sounds good, to the untrained ear, but these are the realities of it. So now you're in the shoe. They serve you with a paper saying that you're getting charged by the disciplinary code, even if it's by the disciplinary code. And once you get charged with a 100 series shot or a 200 series shot, which is fighting or assault, right? You're going to lose good time. So you're getting more days added to your sentence. You're supposed to be out 3 months. 3 months means a lot at the end of your sentence. I was doing a 35-year sentence. If I had to stay 3 more months after, I would have felt it. I wouldn't have been home in the summer. I mean, it's a nightmare. You get 3 more months added to your sentence if they take 90 days good time, which they can for those type of shots. And, when I had that situation in the hole, I didn't get a shot because he didn't say nothing, I didn't say nothing. So I was fortunate. But now if the cops see you, I remember when I had an assaulting another inmate in Lee County. It was right in the middle of the chow hall. It was over a table. There was every cop in the compound was there. You know what I'm saying? But it was to prove a point. You know what I'm saying? Stupid now, right? I mean, thinking of it and going through all the motions again and sitting here saying that could have been, avoided. I mean, there's other ways to handle it, and we try to handle it the best way we could. But I got a shot. They took good time. I was fortunate in the other incident where I didn't even get a shot. But and I was in the hole for almost a year. I think I was 9 months because even after my time had been up, they wouldn't let me out because they were like, "Oh, we don't know what's going to happen." There was racial implications in the fight and this and that. I ended up getting out, ended up being no problem. Yeah, I had a lot of people go for other races, my own race. Everybody went to bat for me, saying that, I was a good guy. I was in different jails with them and I should get out. The other guy started the whole problem, and neither here nor there. So now you're in the shoe. You're not doing nothing. You're living with another dude in the size of your bathroom, and you just 24 hours a day. You might get out for an hour a day, right? And then you get a sanction. They're like, okay, you're spending 90 days in the hole. Now you got to go to a whole nother separate part of the shoe where you can't have your radio, can't have, food, you can't have coffee, can't have anything. There's only certain things you can have. It's a very restrictive environment. Now you stay there for 90 days. Then, when all this stuff is up, all your sanctions up, you get out, say it's 5 months later. Now, you might stay in the shoe waiting for an opening in a cell. There might not be no cells open. Then if there is a cell open, might be with somebody you don't want to live with, so you might have to wait longer. So when you do finally get out, then you're carrying all your property up. Then you're going to unpack. You might have a top bunk because, you're in somebody else's cell or somebody else's cube. Then it might be like a guy you don't want to live with. You don't really like him. You spent all this time finding the guy you want to live with, somebody you're compatible with, somebody that was on a different schedule with you. So your schedules are conflicting. So you can use the cell when he's not using the cell. You know what I mean? So it's all this stuff that goes into it that you hope you never have to go through. That if you do have to go through it, I mean, I've been through it a few times. I only had 2 shots the whole time I was in federal prison, and both of them were for assault. So I went through it. Then there was other times I was locked up for investigation for assault. I was locked up for investigation on other things too. And sometimes it had not even to do with me, but they still locked me up for investigation. That's why you always want to control, your situation you don't want to go back and forth to the shoe. You don't want to keep getting in trouble. It's a nightmare. Forget about losing the time. Everything else attached to it, And you also have to understand there's certain dynamics in prison where some people will go to the shoe, like the hole, that ain't got nothing. They live the same way in the hole as they do on the line. They ain't got nothing. I'm a guy that had a contract in the kitchen. I had all these things going on. I ran a ticket. I didn't want to have, I didn't live like that. Some other people lived like that. They only had state clothes. They stayed in bed all day. I'm going to get my meals delivered to me. Some people, kind of like that. I didn't. You know what I mean? But, when I had to take my licks and go down there, I did, reluctantly, right? Sometimes you don't have a choice. But, those are the things that can happen when you get into a fight in federal prison. So I'm not really sure. It's glorified, right? People say, I'm a tough guy. I'm going to get into it. I don't know anybody. There's some people that, maybe, I don't know, that look for that type of stuff. Maybe they don't have anything. But I've never really seen, in my experience, in my 27 years of experience in prison, anybody going looking for that. There's some people that are a little boisterous, some people different than others, a lot of personalities, and you kind of got to deal with that, And, you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt. And a lot of times when you don't, and you think you're better than other people, and you think that, for some reason you have a little something more than they do, people will humble you. It's just like real life, And so a lot of times you got to check yourself, because the alternative is, it's brutality. You're going through this whole change, getting your good time taken, getting your cell taken, your property's messed up. Then, who knows? Maybe some piece of property that you had, somebody else got it now. Now you got to go handle that. It's just a whole can of worms. So that's the reality about getting into a fight in federal prison. Anything else you hear, try to figure out, if anybody has experience with that, or, a lot of people kind of talk about things and they glorify it, but there's no glory in it at all. That which is bitter to endure will be sweet to remember, right? But when you're going through it, it's brutal. Like and comment on this stuff, man. Share this stuff with your friends. If you think it's interesting, share it. And that's it for tonight.